Hello folks, and welcome to Leg 3 of our China Clipper adventure, my effort to recreate the inaugural flight of the China Clipper flying boat in Flight Simulator. And by now you know what we're doing, so I'll skip the high-level overview of the whole flight, and we'll just get into talking about this particular leg. This is Leg 3 from the atoll of Midway Island down to the atoll of Wake Island. And this is sort of the climactic flight of the whole trip for me. This is the one I've been looking forward to the most since we started because I think it's going to present the greatest challenge. And to give you a little flavor of that, and I'm going to keep this short, I want to emphasize that this will not be a long intro covering a bunch of preliminary topics like we've done in previous videos. This one, we're just going to talk about the prep for this flight, and we're going to get going. So, as far as this flight goes, I'd like to read you a passage from a very excellent book, and it's a short passage, don't worry, but it explains the flavor of why this flight is as significant as it is, better than I think I could, this particular leg. This book is called China Clipper, The Age of the Great Flying Boats. It's written by Robert Gandt, G-A-N-D-T. And this is his description of this leg of the first China Clipper trip. At dawn, the China Clipper was again westbound. There were no signposts marking the 1,260-mile route to Wake. After Curry Island, only 20 minutes past Midway, there were 1,000 miles of trackless ocean. No landmarks, no chain of atolls pointed to the destination. There was only Wake Island, 2.5 square miles of sandspit, barely awash in the Pacific. It was the most demanding feat of aerial navigation in the world. There were no alternate landing sites and not enough fuel for a return to Midway. The only aids to navigation were the sun, sometimes a glimpse of Venus, the drift sight, the navigator's own dead reckoning, and the Adcock direction finder, a capricious device not fully trusted by Navigator Noonan. Pause there for a minute. Navigator Noonan. Did I mention that the navigator for our flight here, our whole trip, is Fred Noonan? You know Fred Noonan's name because he's the navigator that disappeared with Amelia Earhart 2 years later. It's currently November of 1935. Amelia Earhart disappeared, I believe, in 1937. Is that right? Well, in 1935, Fred Noonan was considered the finest aerial navigator in the world, and in fact pioneered a lot of the techniques that are used, or that were used, on this route. He was Pan Am's lead navigator, and he wrote the book on a lot of this stuff, and so he was, of course, the navigator on board the first China Clipper flight. So how did he end up flying with Amelia Earhart 2 years later? Well, we won't get into the whole biography of Fred Noonan. He was let go from Pan American sometime after 1935 because apparently he had a drinking problem. When he was sober, he was considered the best in the world. However, when he was drinking, he had some problems. There were captains that refused to fly with him, so on and so forth. Pan Am finally let him go. He ended up flying with Amelia Earhart because, well, he needed a job. He was supposedly clean at that point. There are rumors to this day that he may have been seen drinking in Papua New Guinea, or I guess regular New Guinea, before they took off on their ill-fated flight to Holland. Well, whether that happened or not, we don't know. But Fred Noonan is our navigator today. You may have noticed when I showed you the map that we have a little dog leg in our line. Our course line does not go straight to Wake Island. It goes down here. And then we make almost a 90-degree turn and fly into Wake Island. Why do we do that? We do it because it's the way Noonan planned this flight when he did it. Let me read you one more passage here. From his bag of navigational tricks, Fred Noonan produced a technique called aim off. Aim off was a tricky but effective way to ensure that a vessel or aircraft did not overshoot a tiny target like Wake. The navigator would deliberately fly a course to one side of his destination. Then, when he had intersected a pre-computed line of position he would obtain by sunsight, he would turn and fly down the sun line to his target. Aim off was not infallible, but it solved half the navigational problem, that of knowing on which side, north or south, the China Clipper might be from Wake. Now, if you've watched any of my videos about the sextant navigation in flight sim. We've talked about this. We've called it a landfall procedure, which is another term for it. The deal is that if we just shot directly for Wake Island, and we were a little bit off per our dead reckoning, when we got to where the time said we should be at Wake Island, we could start looking around, but we wouldn't really know which side of Wake Island we were on. We wouldn't know if we were up here, we wouldn't know if we were down here. So navigators would often plan to offset intentionally from a small target like Wake Island, and then turn and fly down some sort of a line of position to get to the island. That way, you know if you're starting out from down here, you know you're south of Wake, because even if you've made a little bit of an error, I think this is about 70 miles off I planned, so even if you've made a little bit of an error, maybe you're here, maybe you're down here, maybe you're over here, but you're south of Wake, so you turn and fly this line of position into Wake, and it will take you there eventually. What are we going to use for a line of position? Well, we do, of course, have the HfDf. That's the Adcock Direction Finder that was referenced by the book. So we'll use a HfDf bearing, but we're going to correlate that with a sunshot. And I believe Noonan planned this way because nobody fully trusted the radio direction finding. It was still, being proven on this inaugural flight. And so Noonan would have wanted a second way to find Wake Island if the HfDf failed. And so what he used was a line of position off the sun. And this is probably the exact line of position he would have used. It is the line of position that the sun makes through Wake Island on the date the original China Clipper arrived, at the time the original China Clipper arrived. So the only question is whether they intercepted it down here or up here. Down here is a slightly shorter route. It's the logical choice. Otherwise, you'd have to fly past the island up here and turn on and come back a little bit. So my guess is we're doing exactly what Noonan did. And when we get down this way, we'll talk about how we're going to set the sextant up for that shot, and I'll video that segment, but we don't need to get into it for now. But there you go. That's the deal. We're going to try to hit depart one tiny atoll up here, and we're going to try to hit another one, and there's just nothing else around. There's no land along the way. So we're going to be purely dependent on dead reckoning. We're taking off at dawn, so it's a daytime flight, so we're going to be taking sun shots with the sextant. Venus is visible right now, and it would have been at this time and date of the original China Clipper flight, and so I'm sure Noonan was shooting sun shots and Venus shots, and so we're going to do that too. We'll be able to cross those two lines of position and get rough fixes, which we can also supplement with lines of position from the HfDf at Midway, and then from the HfDf at Wake as we get closer. Navigationally, that's the plan. Here's what it looks like by the numbers. It's going to take 7 hours and 35 minutes flying time. 1095.6 nautical miles. I know they said 1,260 miles in the book, probably because those were statute miles. This is nautical miles. It is dawn, November 25th, 1935, on Midway Island. We've got 1,837 pounds of cargo on board, plus 2,000 pounds of supplies bound for Wake Island. We have 3,183 gallons of fuel on board. We're right up to gross weight. Of course, we're taking as much gas as we can. This should give us an afternoon arrival at Wake Island with plenty of daylight left to fly search grids and find the island if that's what it takes. The weather's decent. We've got light winds out of the east. That's enough talking. Let's get going. Alright, we've been tugged off our mooring and pointed east into the wind, so we'll take off to the east, make a turn back around. We've been asked to stay low and overfly the Pan Am dock facilities here for some promotional video to be shot, and so we'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll start climbing. Trim's set, cowl flaps are set, props are full forward. Sperry Autopilot has our on-course heading bugged up, our initial heading at 226. Here we go. to be up on step. I was assuming we had plenty of lagoon here. Hopefully we get off before we hit Sand Island over there, or Eastern Island. There we go. Alright, there's everybody waving, and our videographer, presumably. So long, Midway Island. Climb power set. Go ahead and flip the autopilot on. Make sure we start tracking the correct heading. And we're on our way. We'll turn this into a slideshow, and we'll probably do one conversational piece somewhere halfway along, and then I will talk to you again as we approach the LOP intercept. We're off the lagoon at Midway, and we're on our way. back to the, well, a little more than halfway point. I think this will be our one en route video segment. We are approaching checkpoint 5, and the flight's been progressing pretty well so far. If you take a look at our fixes here, the celestial lines of position are the green lines. They are the Sun and Venus. And the light blue lines are the HfDf bearings off of Midway so far. This next one we're going to take will be the first one we take off of Wake, because we're close enough now. We're closer to Wake than Midway. So you can see we were in pretty good shape here for the first one, just a few miles north, of course. Second one we were a little south, of course. Third one just past checkpoint 2 here, fast and a little bit right. Checkpoint 3 we nailed exactly. Checkpoint 4 we were just a hair fast and a hair right, and we're heading towards checkpoint 5 now, which if you take a look at our navlog, it says we should cross checkpoint 5 at 22:54. I have a Venus shot queued up in the sextant and ready to go here. And we will take it at about 53 and 30 seconds. We'll start the shot. Speed up just a bit here. Now, it is the middle of the day, and I've had people ask if Venus would really be a usable celestial target. And apparently, yes. I've never shot a planet during the day with a real sextant, but apparently it can be done by a skilled navigator. And apparently if you were to take a paper towel tube or something like that and look through it, if you knew where to look, you would probably be able to see Venus. And so a navigator with a bubble octant that he set up ahead of time would be able to point it at the right portion of the sky and hunt around until he found it. And I've already checked. We'll start the sextant shot here. I've already checked in the U.S. Naval Observatory Almanac says that on November 25th, 1935, Venus would have been a very usable celestial target out here in the Pacific. It's far enough away from the sun in the sky. It's high in the sky, and yeah, it would have been usable. So we're going to shoot the sun next. We're shooting Venus first because this will serve as our speed line. The azimuth's almost directly in front of us. And it's a little bit lower than we were expecting, which means maybe we've slowed down. We were making pretty good ground speeds here. Maybe our wind has shifted a little bit because I've had to adjust the sextant down a couple of clicks. So our measured elevation, you'll notice, is a little lower than our expected elevation. And that's, probably just about right. So at 22:54, let me write this down. We'll call it a -10 offset. And then the sun, let's set the sun shot up real quick here. It's an azimuth of 154. An expected elevation of 42 degrees and 41 minutes, so we'll just call it 40 minutes. And shot started. Lean my mouse off a little bit there. And this will be a decent course line because the sun is off of our left. As you can see, it's well, I think the sextant's in the way, but it's up there. And the good news is, it looks like we're about right on course. I would say this is a fairly centered up shot without me having to adjust anything here. Yeah, I think I like that right where it is. While that completes, let's pop up our HfDf. And yeah, we've lost Midway now, no longer a signal from Midway. Wake is frequency 412. And there we go, we're getting a signal from Wake. Let me write down that offset from the sun there. And 0 degree offset. Alright, and the HfDf shot from Wake Island. Set our true course, and the signal's low yet, so the accuracy will be questionable, but we'll take what we can get here. And we're looking for a bearing from Wake Island, so I'm going to go down here and use this. I'd say right there, 30, 40, 50, 60, 61, what, 62 degrees? Let's call it 62 degrees, while keeping in mind that there's a pretty significant margin of error built into there right now. Well, that didn't work like it sometimes doesn't, but okay, we have our shots. Time to plot all this. Checkpoint 5. This is the only full fix plotting that I'm going to show you on the whole video here, so I figure we'll do one full meal deal here. Alright, let's plot Venus, which has an offset of -10 from 225 azimuth. So 045 for 10 miles, let's measure that. .45 for 10 miles, and then the actual line of position is always perpendicular to the azimuth, so 225, about 135, or in this case, 315. That is a good LOP off of Venus. And we only got the sun one a minute later, so I'm not going to worry about advancing lines at all here. The sun was at 154 with no offset at all, so So 244, and we'll draw it back this way. 244. And I'm going to take that as my position with a fairly high level of confidence, but we'll go ahead and plot the Wake HfDf bearing as well, while keeping in mind that it probably isn't as accurate. But let's see how close it passes, how small of a triangle we get, because we'll have 3 lines of position now. Here's the Wake Island HfDf. And what do we say? 62 degrees. 62 degrees. Well, you know what? It's not going to be very bad at all. Well, that's ridiculous. That is far more accurate than I expected the HfDf to be. So, it of course parallels our course shot here, so we don't really get a triangle of lines of position, but look at that. Laterally, we're only talking a couple miles off between our star line course line and our HfDf course line. That's pretty awesome. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to take as our position the celestial shot. I'll bias towards the HfDf a little bit, but I'll still lean more towards the celestial, so right about there. And we will call that 2254 Zulu. And then let's punch it into our navlog, which likes degrees, minutes, seconds, so we'll switch to that format, and we will read north 22 13 32. 22 13 32. east, we've crossed the anti-meridian, which doubles as the international dateline, so it is now yesterday? I think it's yesterday. Either way, we don't care about that. We are in easterly longitude now, though. That's significant. 172, 52, 10. 172, 52, 10. And that is 172 degrees, 52 minutes, 10 seconds, easterly longitude. We will say we took that at 2254. Everything else fills in. First and most significant thing here is let's steer a heading of 223. I've got it pointing us at checkpoint 6. It wants a heading of 223 magnetic. Let's punch that in right away. I didn't get a fuel. I should have gotten a fuel earlier and I didn't. Let's get it now. And let's add a few gallons since we knew we should have gotten it sooner. Let's say 2268 gallons. I explained on an earlier video the reason I use the menu to read the fuel is because the gauges in this airplane model are calibrated in percent, which isn't a very useful way to keep track of fuel. So the flight plan wants pounds, but that's an easy conversion. 2268 gallons, and we know avgas weighs 6 pounds per gallon, so we've got 13,608 left. Alright, so we've got 10 hours and 15 minutes of endurance. We've only got 2 hours left to fly to our destination. We're making good progress here. We were getting earlier. We're now showing 2:08 again for an arrival time at destination, which our original flight plan was predicting 2:09, and we took off right on time, so really this is right in the ballpark here. Now our ground speed must have decreased. Let's take a look at this. Yeah, see, we trended up for a while, 144, 148, 150. Yeah, we dropped back down to 141. The winds must have changed a little bit on us. Yep, a little bit more of a crosswind and decreased a few knots. That's our calculated wind. All right, this all makes sense. We are doing just fine. We're now getting useful shots off a wake. I've got 2 more checkpoints to hit, and I will come back and video the LOP intercept as well, because I'll show you how we set the sextant up to intercept this sun line of position, and of course we'll be backing it up with the HfDf. With any luck, once we turn on and get established, we'll descend to get under the clouds, and we should find wake pretty easily. We've been lucky so far. It's been a very nice day the whole time I've been flying here. Will this continue? I don't know. If we get to wake and it's socked in with thunderstorms, we'll be more reliant on the HfDf because we probably won't be able to get a sextant shot. So that could be interesting, but well, one thing at a time. I'll see you when we're approaching that LOP. Alright, welcome back. We are approaching the LOP, and there was a fairly significant screw-up that I made that I trapped, and I'll tell you about that while we still have a few minutes. We're somewhere past checkpoint 7 over here, approaching what is our new LOP intercept, but we have a few minutes to talk. But you'll notice this is now our LOP intercept versus this down here. What happened? I'm an idiot. That's what happened. I realized that I calculated this original sun line of position to intercept, to follow to wake. I calculated that based on a west longitude, not an east longitude. And I noticed that, and here's where following realism as best you can help some realistic error trapping, for lack of a better term here, is I realized as we were flying along that the line of position the sun was making didn't seem to be trending in a way that it was going to be this by the time we got down here. And indeed it's not. It's going to be this. I recalculated based on easterly longitude, and this right here is actually the sun line of position that falls through Wake Island at the time we will arrive at this point. I have managed to modify the raw flight plan information in my my navlog that I'm using here, and it properly recalculated everything for me. And so now we are looking at arriving at the new LOP intercept at 0059 Zulu. So, foolish mistake on my part, but kind of cool that adhering to shooting realistic celestial azimuths allowed me to catch that mistake. So a little plug there for keeping it real wherever you can. That being said, we have set up the sextant with an assumed position of Wake Island and the azimuth that we know the sun will be at this time that we arrive here, so that we can intercept this line of position. So we can start testing this out by taking sextant shots. Okay, this is the assumed position of Wake Island. This is the azimuth our sun will make and the elevation we're expecting it to be at, and let's see how we're doing. Now obviously we're not on it yet. You notice I have to adjust the sextant bubble down a little bit to line up with the sun, but not by much. I'd say that's about aligned, and in the interest of brevity, I'm going to force the shot to complete early. We'll call that the shot we're getting for now. So you see, we still have a 15-mile distance offset. Now that doesn't actually mean we're only 15 miles from the LOP intercept. You'd have to actually measure 15 miles away from the azimuth from Wake Island and then draw a line of position. So we're probably something a little bit more than 15 miles away from the LOP intercept. But we're definitely making progress, and if I drew that line of position, I bet it would cross out here somewhere. Another thing we can do is request a HfDf bearing from Wake Island. We are expecting a HfDf bearing. This line true is 282, which means we are expecting a true HfDf bearing from Wake of the reciprocal of that at 102, right? So let's see how we're doing here. Sync up our heading card, and there's our signal, and a little less than 8 miles visibility at Wake. Hazy down there, or some rain in the area? Hope it doesn't get much worse than that. We do have to acquire the island visually. But anyway, looking at our signal meter here, there's a drop already. So the peak is somewhere right around there, and you can see we're only, 92, 94 degrees. We're looking for 102. So we have a little ways to go, but we're getting close. Yeah, we're getting close. I would say that's about right on with the sextant right there now. And it's only a distance offset of 10, so you see we're closing in on that LOP. We're getting a little closer with every shot. Our navlog was anticipating, just based on dead reckoning, it was anticipating that we would arrive at that LOP intercept point at 0059 Zulu. It is. That's only 5 minutes from now, so I'll tell you what. I'd like to catch the LOP intercept on video, so I am going to keep you running here, I think. Maybe we'll accelerate just a hair. I'm having a little problem with my track IR system here. Tell you what, I'll be back in a moment. Let's fix this. Alright, problem solved. Let's continue pressing on here. It's coming coming up on 4 minutes to LOP intercept. And we're getting close, according to the sextant. Looks like I still need a couple clicks down. I'd say that's pretty close right there. That's even pretty close right there. And one more click down, probably. That's an offset of 10 miles. Let's speed things up for a few minutes. Got a bearing of about 95, 96 degrees here. One click down seems to do it on the sextant now, so that's a 5-mile offset. We are definitely getting close. At 98, 99 degrees on the HfDf. We continue to request HfDf bearings from the operator on Wake Island. How we doing on our airspeed? Yep. Our dead reckoning looks like it's going to have been very good for this point. We were supposed to be here at 59, and boy do I think we're going to be close, guys. Alright, another sextant shot. Oh man, that looks like about it, doesn't it? Uh-oh. We'll revisit that later. Yeah, the sextant is just about lined up now, guys. That means that we are flying right onto this this line to intercept. We're very close to it at this point. We're within probably 5 miles of it. Let's align our compass card and take another bearing here. About 100 degrees. We're looking for a bearing of 102 from Wake Island, so when our operator tells us we have a bearing of 102, we are there. That's going to be really just about any minute, I think. Now remember, there's some inaccuracy in the sextant. The HfDf might almost be more accurate than the sextant at this point. But the sextant, I would say, is saying we are right on that LOP. Let's request one more HfDf bearing. Maybe 101. Very, very close. Give this one more try. Certainly need to be able to look around, find the damn island, don't we? Oh, and we just got into some clouds. Look at that. Remember we talked about how that could happen? Ha, we can't get any more sextant shots, but we know that per the sextant, basically, we're right on that LOP, or flying onto it anyway. Let's request one more HfDf bearing. Yeah, still holding firm at about 101. Shoot, all of a sudden, no more sextant guidance to be had. But our dead reckoning tells us we're there or a little past, and the HfDf, this whole trip's only been accurate within a degree or two. I'd say we're there. Okay, time to make a turn. And I computed a no drift heading of 276, so right turn to 276. And we will say we arrived at this point at, let's say 0101. reason I did this, I said LOP intercept, and we're going to say 0, 1, 0, 1, and it will then calculate the heading it would like us to fly. It's unhappy about something. What's wrong here? Clearly I screwed something up. Oh, that's right. Times. You have to actually enter 2501, and it will then understand you meant 0101. Okay, so with the wind it's calculated, it wants us to fly a magnetic heading of 276, which actually is precisely what the no drift heading is. See, drift correction is 0. There you go. So we must have either a straight headwind or tailwind at this point, which we don't. So why is it calculating no wind drift correction? That's kind of odd, isn't it? But okay, that's what it wants us to do. That's what we're going to do. And it's saying we should start down at 0119. It's saying we should arrive at Wake Island at 0136. Okay, we're flying 276. See if we can verify we're on the line here. Can we get another sextant shot? Ah, sextant still thinks we're in the clouds. HfDf. Let's try the HfDf. Requesting another HfDf bearing from our operator here. Yeah, about 101, 102, isn't it? We are right on that line. Now, we'll continue to verify that by requesting HfDf shots from the operator in Wake Island, and we will have Fred Noonan continue to take sextant shots as he can. But theoretically, it's now 0104. We should be overflying the island at 0136. It wants us to start down at 0119. I probably won't start a descent until I see the island, unless it becomes necessary to get under the clouds. We have nothing else for landmarks out here. There's literally nothing but Wake Island out here, so there's no worry about misidentifying an island or anything. Any speck of land we find, unless we are hundreds of miles from where we think we are, any speck of land we find will be Wake Island. So, that is how you fly a landfall procedure. We are now on our sun line of position, backing it up with our HfDf, flying into Wake Island. I'll continue to try to take sextant shots, continue to use HfDf shots to make sure we stay on course, and I'll see you when we find an island. Alright, we started our descent. It's 0132. I believe 0139 was our dead reckoning estimated arrival time at Wake Island. I did have to start down because the clouds were getting a little bit thicker, and that has eliminated possibility for sextant shots. The HfDf says that we're doing alright yet. Signal strength is increasing because we're approaching the island. Well, that's why I brought you back, because as a matter of fact, oh, we just found rain. I got a glimpse of Wake Island. It is right in front of us. It is just below this cloud right now. And it would figure that the visibility is decreasing as we get down here into the tropical haze, and apparently it's raining as well, so here we are. But you're going to see the island as soon as I get us down bit quicker here. Let's try this. It's right there through that cloud. That's funny. If I'd brought you back just a minute earlier, you'd have seen it. And I know it's Wake Island. There's really no need to use any cross-checking navigation because it's the only island out here. Grab another HfDf bearing because why not? Right there. Yeah, we've drifted slightly east. Slightly east. Alright, winds 080 at 17 down there on Wake, so when we do get down there, oh guys. We just got a new weather report from Wake. Look at what the weather's doing down there. Shoot, we're going to practically be IMC here. Oh man, I was not expecting to have to deal with this. 2.5 miles, alright. Well, at this point, we're kind of getting down to dead reckoning games here. In which case, let's continue to fly our flight planned airspeed. And, when were we estimating the island? 0136. Which is, shoot, almost now. Great. Well, I did see it. And we do still have some visibility, and I know we were pointed just about right at it, so I don't think there's a great danger of missing it, but we are going to hustle on down at this point. Let's get down to where we have good ocean contact, and you know, these are the kind of games these guys would have had to play. I definitely wasn't expecting it. Visibility improving a little bit, maybe? This is painful, I swear. I saw an island. It was right in front of us. There it is. See it? There it is. Right there. Correct a hair left while we're at it. We'll stop at 1,000 feet. That seems to provide adequate visibility here. Well, we know we're not going to get any kind of a sextant shot here. 0137, that's when we were supposed to arrive at Wake. Wow, and puzzlingly, we actually are getting a sextant shot. Not sure how that's working. When the sextant gauge thinks you're in the clouds isn't always when you think you're in the clouds. Anyhow, it's showing us basically on our LOP yet. And at this point, the HfDf ought to be pretty darn accurate. Yeah, about 102. Right on. And visibility's decreased, and we've lost the island again. Okay. Down to 500 feet we go. Well, this is ridiculous. I didn't mean to make such a long, drawn-out arrival video, but, actually got a little bit interesting here, didn't it? Yeah, I'm just starting to see the red light. That, I think, is probably the pappy of the runway. That I did remove the runway, but I guess I forgot to remove the pappy, so there it is. But, you know, Pan Am would have had a beacon out here, so I'd say it's legitimate enough to say we're seeing the lights. Yep, there is Wake Island right in front of us, and what's current weather there? Winds out of the east with 2.5 miles visibility. You know, it occurs to me that in all this, I never really did have the time to show you anything about Wake Island. I hate to do it, but let's pause that for a minute. Let me just take a look at Wake Island with you. We're approaching from over here, remember. So Wake Island is an atoll, which means it's a series of fringing islands and reef here, with a central lagoon, which made it suitable for seaplane operations. There is today a runway here, and it's used as an ETOPS alternate, but of course there wasn't a runway in 1935, so none of that's there. All of this is called, which island is this? I forget. I think this is Sand Island. And then we've got Peel Island up here. Now Pan Am, when they first set up the atoll, this place was completely uninhabited and uninhabitable when Pan Am showed up. There wasn't even fresh water out here. There's nothing out here. It's smaller than Midway. Well, they originally wanted to set up their base over here on the Big Island, but it was too low, apparently, at the time. I don't know if it's been built up since or what. They realized that the most suitable island was Peel Island over here. Peel Island is today pretty much unused. Now, there's a lot of World War II history out here on Wake Island, as you know. And so, you know, when you're looking at stuff today on Google Earth and pictures and Wikipedia entries and things like that, it all focuses on the World War II history for both Midway and Wake, and it is a little bit different to find the earlier Pan Am history. These panoramio photos were somewhat helpful, at least for other places, not so much for here. Unfortunately, Google's turned them off, which pisses me off. That's, 10 or 15 years worth of data that used to be useful for all sorts of research, and it's gone, so that sucks. Thanks, Google. Anyhow, I have some pretty good Pan Am generated maps, drawings of all their island bases for their PR materials for the Pacific flying. I'll put it up in the slideshows, but what you'll see of Peel Island here is you'll see just north of this spit that sticks out is it was the Pan Am dock facility. It would be easy to think that this was it, particularly when you saw that panoramio photo that said seaplane base. This was a U.S. Navy base that the U.S. Navy was building after World War II started, but it never went anywhere, of course, because the Japanese occupied Wake Island. And so that is not the Pan Am facility. That is the U.S. Navy facility. The Pan Am facility was a little further south, north of this spit. I suspect that that is the remains of the Pan Am dock right there. Now, it could just be some coral heads that appear in a line, but the shoreline has a little aberration right there, you see. I'm pretty sure that that was where the Pan Am dock was. And so I put my dock there. And the Pan Am village was up here, the hotel was up here, so on and so forth. And you just can't find any remains of it anymore on Google Earth. Anyway, that's where we're going. Wind being out of the east, I think we will we'll approach the island. We'll make a maybe a left circle around it here, around Peel Island, and we'll land in the lagoon to the southeast here. Alright, enough preliminaries, here we go. Can't believe we flew 1,100 miles across the Pacific to find Wake Island in 2.5 miles of visibility. That's pretty crazy. I think at this point, it's just time to start flying. The autopilot's off. Rudder controls are very weird in this model. I mean, I'm sure it would have been really ponderous, but I don't think it would have been quite like it is. Anyhow, there's the main island where the, of course, the airport was, or will be, depending on how you want to look at it. We'll follow the atoll around here. I'm going to shove the props forward now. Okay, so this is Peel Island out here, you see, and there's that sand spit area we looked at, and the Pan Am dock is just north of there, and there it is right there. My goodness, there's almost no horizon down here. Practically flying this thing by instruments. Used to doing this kind of stuff in the Beaver up in Alaska, but not really how you want to arrive a lagoon in the Pacific in a big old flying boat. So here's some of the Pan Am village I put in here, and remember, there's the dock. Our flight arriving in November of 1935. There's the Adcock direction finder. There wouldn't have been a whole lot out here. These islands were built up over the year that is just to come in preparation for passenger flights. We are just a mail flight. As a matter of fact, we're flying in a lot of supplies to this island for the folks that are based here. Boy, the sound is weird in this airplane. I know, I shouldn't complain. And I'm not, really. I'm really glad we have this model in Flight Sim. I'm just pointing out it has a few quirks. They're not all my fault. Alright, here we go. Alright, rolling out on final into our sheltered lagoon here. Peel Island just off to the left. There's the Pan Am dock right over there. We are going to smack the water if we don't arrest this descent rate a little bit. And we have arrived. Welcome to Wake Island. Rather interesting end to a trip that was very routine up until that arrival. That's the sand spit, and there's our dock. Alright, we'll come back for a little debrief, just take a look at our trail and how well we actually hit that LOP intercept. But I think you get the picture. And let's see here. We landed at 0143, call it. Alright, be back in a minute. Alright, welcome welcome back. We'll just do a quick debrief here. You can see we are lying at our mooring on the dock on Wake Island. The hotel and village are in the background there on Peel Island. And you can see most of the rest of the atoll now. I think visibility has improved a little bit in the time it took us to get towed over here. Anyhow, just take a look at our flight here. We've got our track up. The track is the purple line right here. There's our takeoff with our left turn outbound and our promotional pass for the videographer. And then, you know, we did pretty well. Took our first fix here. We were, about a mile off where we actually were. Not bad at all, huh? By checkpoint 1, we calculated ourselves to be fast and left, and we were. Look at that, purple line goes right through the pin. You'll notice I didn't drop my position fix pin right where the celestial fix is. I took into account the fact that the HfDf line we got showed us over here a little bit, and so I gave more credence to the celestial fix than the HfDf line, but I offset my position a bit towards the HfDf line, and you can see that was the right thing to do, and we darn near nailed it. Calculated we needed to correct right. We corrected right. Overshot a little bit. And we were fast at checkpoint 2, so by the time we got a fix, we were over here. Once again, I leaned towards the celestial fix, but I did offset the fix pin just a hair towards the HfDf shot. You can see that was the right thing to do. We were left of where the celestial fix put us here. Another course correction. Checkpoint 3, I thought I nailed it exactly because both the celestial fix and the HfDf put us right on course. And unfortunately we were a few miles off course there, but still not too bad. We were still north of course at checkpoint 4, and we got a fix that told us that this time, so we did introduce a correction. Checkpoint 5, I put us back here, so we were a few miles off that one as well. Just after checkpoint 6, got a very good fix. Introduced the left course correction. I intentionally took this fix before checkpoint 7, so it wasn't so much that we were slow, it's just that I knew we were getting close to the LOP intercept. So we were pretty well where I thought we were, maybe a mile or two off, not too bad. And then here is the, really the climactic event of the whole trip, the LOP intercept, where we turned on that sun line of position into Wake Island, and we were also using the HfDf for reference, and you can see we darn near nailed it. I actually thought we would have made the turn a little bit late. I intentionally waited a little bit longer than the sextant told me I ought to. I think the HfDf was maybe still showing us a degree east of where we wanted to be, but we made the turn, and I mean, shoot, we were, certainly within the ballpark here. What was that? We were a half mile. To come that far across the ocean and turn onto a line within a half mile is pretty damn good. We converged and we're almost right on. Started diverging to the east a little bit. We introduced that course correction back towards the island, but remember we were visual at this point. And there is our circuit of the island and splashdown in the lagoon. Not too bad. So we landed at, I was going to say I didn't think I cleared it yet. We landed at 143. I called us in the blocks at 150. Our arrival time calculated was 153, so I mean we were only 10 minutes off. That was, remember, what the flight plan calculated we'd arrive at before we took off. And the other thing about this is, no, I tell you, that's been updated with the new LOP. Yeah, okay. So we were about 10 minutes earlier than the flight plan thought we'd be. Not bad. It's a distance of 1,056 nautical miles, and we found Wake Island, a little speck of an atoll in the absolute middle of nowhere, in 2.5 miles visibility. Not too bad. There's where we started in Alameda. We have come through Hawaii, through Midway, and now to Wake. We've transited over half of the Pacific Ocean, and from here, the targets get bigger. And the flying, quite frankly, gets maybe a little more boring. From Wake, we hit Guam, which isn't the biggest target, but there's other things around it, and we're going to splash down into Apra Harbor here on the west side of Guam. The original Pan Am base was actually over here on this little spit, and you know how I know that? Show you how I know that. One of those helpful little panorama photos that we no longer have. Sunset looking west from Clipper landing site. So that's Guam. Turn the photos off because they get distracting, those big bubbles. And then from Guam, we proceed on to Manila, and that'll be the final leg. And Manila's over here, and obviously there's all kinds of targets to hit out here in Manila. And we splash into Manila Bay here, and that marks the end of our journey. I'll be honest, I think the next two videos will probably be primarily slideshows with maybe a little bit of talking at the end. Like I said, I really feel like this was sort of the penultimate flight of the trip from Midway to Wake. I'm pretty pleased with how we managed it, and the next two, you know, and here you get overconfident, you get lost, right? But I think the next two, and especially the last one from Guam to Manila, are going to be pretty routine. But hey, thanks for coming along on this one, and it was a heck of a lot of fun. If you like this stuff, I encourage you to try this flight from Midway to Wake. That's one of the more interesting legs I think you can fly in the Pacific. All right, I'll get leg 4 ready. We'll keep it rolling.